Hello and welcome to another exciting conversation surrounding education. I am Clement Townsend, founder of Broadcasting Career Mentor. And certainly as I record this live broadcast, the school year is winding down for a lot of districts, administrators, and educators around the country. And what a school year it's been. Certainly, it's been a school year unlike any other very challenging school year, but the end goal remains the same for students to get in-demand skills. And certainly the pandemic has shown that whereby it can be difficult in terms of the digital divide. We've also seen that there are some innovative ways and some different and new and exciting opportunities for students to get these in-demand skills. Certainly test scores are important, but really making sure students have different choice, different options to promote their voice and be engaged and be creative. That is super important to ensure that they thrive and succeed in the 21st century. Joining me today to take part in this discussion, I'm so happy to have Shauna Brown with me. She has served in the field of education for over 15 years. She is currently the assistant principal of the Academy of Aerospace and Engineering in Connecticut, which is a STEM-themed magnet school. She's actually the first female to serve in this role in the school's history, not to mention she's the founder of Melanin in STEM, the organization, and the founder of Teach for the Culture, LLC, a hugely popular brand and community. And one thing that has me super excited, Shauna is an alumni of Temple University. Shout out to Temple, shout out to TU, which is the school I went to as well. So Shauna, so glad to have you with me today to engage in this discussion. How are you doing?
Thank you so much for having me, Clement. I am doing wonderful. Thank you. As you said, the school year is winding down. We have about 2 weeks left, and it has been a year, last year and a half, like no other. But I'm excited, nevertheless, and I'm excited to be here with you this evening. So thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. So, I was titling this conversation Joy in Education. And certainly we're going to hit on a variety of topics. Certainly for people that are watching on YouTube or anybody that's watching on Facebook, I encourage them to type in the chat. I encourage them to leave their comments. I'll try to monitor the comments or the questions as much as I can as we engage in the chat. But I certainly want to offer that to anyone and emphasize to anyone, if you tune in, please put your comments, please put your questions in the chat. But let's start with this thought process of joy in education. I think it should be obvious that, for educators, they should be passionate and trying to cultivate a joyful environment and how that will help the students. But certainly, if you've ever interacted with students, sometimes they can kind of suck the joy out of the building, just depending on the students that you have. It can be difficult between all the obligations and the pandemic. But can you just give your thought process on the importance of joy and why that matters so much, why that has always mattered in terms of the educational setting?
That's right. Thank you for the question. So when I think of joy, I think of a multitude of things, including an opportunity to be yourself, an opportunity to thrive, an opportunity to pursue things that you're interested in, an opportunity to be creative. And so again, joy to me is an essential part of the learning process. One of my quotes says, joy and learning must coexist. So I really believe in this idea of centering joy and having joy as a part of the educational process. I know that when people feel good, when people experience joy, they're more likely to hold on to the learning. They're more likely to have more meaningful experiences with school. And so joy to me should be a central part of both the learning process, schooling environments, education overall.
So let's talk about, what could that look like? Certainly, I believe knowing the kids' names has to do with respect and has to do with making sure that they're heard or make sure they're seen. I've heard people talk about in schools, the way that the school is set up, maybe the paint colors and things of that nature having an emphasis. But for you, what does that actually look like to cultivate that type of environment? What's something that you've seen or something that you felt like really worked well in a school that you were working at that really cultivated that type of atmosphere and environment?
I think it actually, so when students come into the building, when they come to us in schools in pre-K and kindergarten, they come to us full of joy. It's natural. It's part of the human process. And so I think over time, though, in schools, that joy tends to get kind of squeezed out over time. I think with the emphasis on testing, with the overemphasis on testing or standardized testing, with the overemphasis on grades, with the overemphasis on just achieving numbers as opposed to real learning, that joy gets kind of squeezed out of the process. And so I call myself a joy advocate. I'm an advocate for that joy coming right back into education and for us to continue cultivating it all the way up through college and then beyond. I think it starts also as an educator, starts with us as teachers and the educators. We have to feel that sense of joy in order to cultivate that within our spaces and within our education communities. If we walk into the space without that, or not having that, or not knowing that sense, or not knowing what brings us joy, it's hard to bring that same passion to your students. And so, for example, if you're extremely passionate about what you're teaching, extremely passionate about learning, extremely passionate about making sure that students have a great experience in learning, it's going to be, you're not able to transfer that over. Like if you come in miserable every day, you're going to make your environment miserable for the students. And so it really is, again, these kids come to us joyful, but it's us kind of building upon that joy and kind of weaving it in to make sure that that's a part of what we're experiencing in schools. That includes community building. That includes sometimes gamifying things, incorporating competition, movement, all the things that kind of bring joy to people naturally, just incorporating all those things into the process. And that looks different for different people as well.
So you mentioned, I guess, the testing part of it. And certainly, I think and I feel, a big part of education is the testing. We have to make sure that a student, is at a certain grade level and they achieve this benchmark. How do you personally feel, or, as an administrator, kind of balance out, testing is a part of education. I don't think that's something that's going to go away. And certainly it has its needfulness, in certain places. But how do you balance out, okay, making sure that students do test well and the achievement part with this joy part and this creativity? How do you try to balance those two things?
That's an awesome question, which I also love. And I think that, so first of all, there are different types of tests or assessments, right? And they all serve different purposes. Standardized testing, those are what we call kind of formative assessments. And so they're more cumulative in nature. And so we're not using it to base our instruction off of. So tests such as the SBAC, what we have in Connecticut, or other standardized tests that every student within the state takes, those aren't used in order for us to plan instruction. There are other types of tests or assessments that we actually use, either daily, quarterly, weekly, monthly, to actually plan for instruction. And that's looking at where a student is and we know where they need to be. And so it's taking that information to actually plan for instruction. But with the standardized tests, those again aren't used as much for the purpose of instructing or improving instruction. That is just kind of giving us a benchmark of where a student may be. And the validity of those tests are sometimes in question because those tests are taken at one point in time. So that test taken on one day at one point in time does not tell us the totality of what a student can do, what they're capable of, or what they understand. That's just giving us a snapshot. And so I think, though, with different legislation telling us that we have to meet certain criteria on these tests, there tends to be an overemphasis on these standardized tests. It's mostly within urban schools and within urban education or schools that serve predominantly students of color, where that pressure to raise test scores is present. And that kind of leaves out the human part of the education process. So again, I agree with what you said earlier. Like testing will always be a part of education, period. Like that just is, because we have to know where students are. But when there's an overemphasis on standardized testing or testing that doesn't really help inform our instruction or help get students to another level, that tends to suck a lot of the kind of creativity and the joy and the human side of education out of it, because we're just focusing on numbers as opposed to focusing on the whole student, and their individual needs.
So let's get to that joy part, or let's dive into that a little more. Let's get into the creativity part. I feel like project-based learning, when students are able to be hands-on, when students are able to participate, when those type of things happen, in the classroom in different subjects, I believe that can certainly, build a student or stimulate a student's creativity, which I think is so important. Is there intertwining? What do you feel like the relationship might be between a creativity and a joy and a project-based approach?
I think there's absolutely a huge correlation. So if you think about, like, as an adult, who is not in K-12 schools, is if most of us think about what brings us joy, is doing things that we enjoy, doing things that we like, doing things that we're passionate about. Project-based learning allows you to do that, because project-based learning is based on the student's individual interest. And so building and working on a project around that, where they're learning about something that they're interested in, absolutely brings joy, and it's much more memorable than just doing, a worksheet or just reading a book about it. But when you're actually working on something that you enjoy, working on something based on your choice, it absolutely is a huge factor in bringing joy into the classroom, into the learning process.
What can that look like? Certainly, I've heard you speak on some of the things or some of the options that the students are privileged, I would say, or students are fortunate enough to have at the educational place where you work. What can that look like in terms of, I don't know, maybe a robotics or maybe a computer science, or, can you give some examples of what that might look like? And in terms of, again, this stimulating creativity and maybe making it more joyful, more fun, as opposed to worksheets. I sometimes say students might remember projects over papers.
Oh, yeah.
Because, how often will you remember that paper that you turned in? But if you did a project and made something or created something, I think that's more memorable. But what are maybe some examples that you can give?
Absolutely. So we've had students that have built different mobile apps, different software. We've had students that, and it's based on what they're interested in, right? So we have, for example, I had a student that is very interested in mental health and helping other young people with mental health issues. And so they built a whole app around mental health. There's like a meditation part of the app. There's a part about numbers that you can contact if you need someone to talk to. And we've had students go to, like, this student won an app challenge. They went to Capitol Hill and actually showed some of our legislators in the Senate how to build an app and why it's important and how it can impact people. And so a project like that, it was something that the student was very interested in, and they actually, built an app around it. So they're learning how to code, they're learning how to, program, but at the same time, they're doing something that they're passionate about. And so projects like this, to me, definitely helps to bring a sense of joy into the learning space. We've had other students there's another student who, again, was very interested in innovative ways of helping students with mental health challenges or just needs or anxiety. And so she did a project where she brought in, they're called like therapy dogs. And so having students like take care of them, take care of the dog, and just having time with that, and then kind of tested like how they felt before and after, looked at various ways of kind of getting to the same thing. And so again, that was a project based on something that student was interested in. It was innovative, and I know they will never forget it. And just countless examples and such, and just, not just within STEM, but it could be something within helping others, or within learning about something that they're very interested in. I had a student that was very interested in football, for example. And so they did a whole capstone project around the types of different helmets.
Okay.
The numbers of concussions over the years, compared the concussions, 10 years ago to the number now, and and traumatic brain injury and all of that stuff, because it's something that they were interested in, they were passionate about, they loved. They did a whole project about it. They proposed new ideas to the local athletic departments, and so that was their project.
Yeah,
So,
that just really excites me when I hear things like that, you know, whether it's about mental health or whether it's about football or whatever the topic is, just knowing that, you know, when you and I went to school, even well before Temple University, but even probably in elementary school or high school, like pen and paper, you
right.
know, the main form of learning. Even, you know, when I was in school, and I would imagine it's the same for you, there might be some type of projects where you do a construction board. You might go to the store and, you know, put some things together. But now with technology, it's just so many other things that can be done. There's so many other options that students can have, so many different choices. You know, I really hope that educators start to kind of take advantage and hopefully think outside of the norm of what it used to be available, and now branching out and hopefully learning some new strategies, not necessarily sticking to what they did in the past, Shauna, because as we know, you know, society is evolving, technology continues to evolve, and students need to be able to learn and navigate and be exposed to a lot of different things in school. And I don't know if that's always the case. How do you feel about that?
That's right. So I agree with you. I mean, 100%. You're right on point, right on target. And even within, you know, the last year and a half with the pandemic, that kind of highlighted this issue even more. But I think that before, so students were ahead of the curve already. So it's the teachers, the educators, it's us that have to kind of catch up.
Okay.
So all of this, like, you know, adults now are, you know, with the pandemic, going on Zoom and having video conference. They've been doing that. You know what I mean? And, so, and even in terms of, you know, the creation of videos and using multimedia approaches, they're doing that, like, with or without education. They're doing that. They're there. So I think we have to provide more opportunities for them to do these types of products and this type of communication using a multitude of media and other methods. We have to allow space for it, and not just follow the traditional route that maybe most of us as educators had gone through previously. But the students are there. They're ready. They're ready. They're hungry. They're ready to create technology. They're ready to use it in ways that it hasn't been used in schools before. We just have to keep creating space for it and kind of catch up to them.
You've been an instructional coach. How difficult is that, though, you know, for a teacher to know that a student might be ready and a student might know how, and the teacher might not know how to then kind of implement it and learn some things, and maybe leaning on the student a little bit, you know, to make some things happen or to execute. As an instructional coach, have you had those experiences, and what is that like?
So that's the key right there, actually, allowing the students to actually take some ownership within the classroom and allowing ourselves as, you know, adults and educators to learn from our kids. Like, gone are the days where the teacher is the one who holds all the knowledge. Like, those days are done. There's so much information out there. There's so many opportunities out there. We have to be willing to not just learn from other adults or people, professionals, but learn from our kids also. I think for teachers, though, so again, another thing I saw this year throughout the pandemic was teachers, because we were forced, we had to learn technology quickly. It was a quick turnaround time. We shut down March 13th of last year, and by the following week, we were up and running in multiple different platforms using different types of technology we hadn't used before. And so I think when we're able to learn it, we're able to do it. I think that the hesitation comes in from some teachers is where, if they don't know about the technology, they don't feel comfortable using it. But once we saw, again, once people were comfortable with using it, they learned quickly, and we had to learn. They were right on. They didn't miss a beat.
You mentioned a moment ago multimedia and video creation, and certainly that's something that I really, you know, talk about quite a bit, something that I'm hugely passionate about. And I see, you know, educators moving in that direction, dipping their toe in the water. Some might be doing, screencastify and recording their screen and things of that nature. But what I still hope to see more of and really hope to help with is educators allowing students, as you mentioned, to create videos in the classroom related to their learning.
Yes.
Like, I think that's something that can be hugely powerful, that can really bridge the gap. We're talking about the joy, so a fun environment, but also kind of fun projects and to make learning more fun. Exactly. And again, this might not work, for every single unit. It might not be something that's done every day or every week, right, but still throughout the year, sprinkling it in different units and allowing a student to say, or give them the option to say, hey, we're talking about this subject in history. I want you to make sure that you show me that you know this, this, and this. And now go ahead and create a video, because as you mentioned, students are already there. Yeah. I just feel like for students to have video opportunities, that's something that I know they would enjoy, because I've seen it and I would like to see more of. What has been your experience with potentially that sort of thing happening in learning?
So again, I agree, Clement. You're right on point. I agree. You're right on target with this. And that was actually one of the things. So a lot of teachers, especially early in the school year, struggled with trying to get students engaged. We were, most of the students were home at that time. And there's a time where it was hybrid. So some students were in person and some students were at home. But the challenge was the engagement piece. And so exactly what you said is one of the ideas I brought to one of my teams of teachers and said, how about, have you tried having the students create videos based on the content? And they're like, no. But what had made me think of that is I was over my sisters the weekend before, and I watched my nieces spend hours creating videos. Kids love it. So why not take what kids love and what they're already doing and incorporate that in the learning process and in school? I think it makes total sense. I think that it's a definite thing that would boost engagement. The teachers that I spoke to about that actually implemented that suggestion idea, and they saw the engagement go up. They saw that engagement go right up. So just by incorporating that piece, more students became engaged because it's something that they, enjoy and love.
I'm just curious, what grade level was that, these teachers that you were referring to?
This is actually 9th grade.
Okay.
So I work at so I'm an administrator at a 6 through 12 school, but I work with grades 9 through 12.
Okay. Fantastic. And again, I typically work with 5th through 12th. And yeah, so I see freshmen do it, 5th and 6th graders really take on to it, really, I guess maybe that middle school and up is really where students can start to engage in this and really do some editing and some creation. And again, stimulate that creativity. Let's move though into the STEM part, which I know something that makes you super excited. I know that's one of the I think one of the distinguishing factors, or one of the things that your school does real well. For students that might not necessarily want to go into science, I believe there still are benefits for them to, take part in STEM activities. Why could this help students that don't necessarily want to maybe have a career in a science or maybe a computer field?
Absolutely, because number one, a big part of science is inquiry. And inquiry will work with whatever you want to do, whatever field you're interested in going in anything in life. There has to be that inquiry piece. And science helps students to think and ask questions and learn new things and be curious. All those things can benefit any student, any person in their adult life in whatever they're doing. You have to be able to ask the good questions, find out why, want to discover, want to learn more, to be able to make hypotheses and think about why something may happen. And so science is the field where all that happens, where the whys are answered and discovered and thought about and questioned. And so that again helps in any field that they want to go into. And so I think, just having that as a foundation, just getting into the habit of having students engage in inquiry wherever it is, whether it be science or another area, And a lot of problems, to me, even social problems, are solved in that way. Like if we're thinking about things in that way, if we're asking the questions and delving deeper and looking at the information, looking at the data, gathering data, that all, that's a piece that I think more of us, even as adults, need to be doing. And so developing that at a young age for students is key and is absolutely critical for me.
So dive into that a little deeper. Science is inquiry based, and that can help in a variety of areas. But now when we go into computer science, and how does that play into the world in which we live, or should I say the world that students will be going out into, and how that can help them? If you could speak on that piece relative to computer science.
Sorry about that. So yeah, so in terms of computer science, I think it's actually very similar to science, where
Okay.
there's a lot of, except for the fact that there's even more problem solving within computer science. And so that algorithmic thinking, that it develops a sense of like perseverance and persistence, which helps again across all fields. But then it's applying it, computer science is applied to computers, but it can be applied to everything we do. So breaking it down simply, computer science is making a plan, following certain steps, being willing to make those steps explicit, being willing and able to problem solve things that may come up. And that would be like within, debugging or finding out where something went wrong. Again, something that can be applied everywhere in life. And just as a STEM educator, I think it's also critical that students, even if they're not interested or they think they're not interested in going to computer science, it helps you to develop as a human and helps you to develop your mind and helps you to sharpen your skills and make those connections, within your brain, and it kind of, it ripens you for problem solving, which you'll have to, deal with in anything that you're doing. And again, for many people, that is something that brings joy. For some, it brings frustration. For others, it brings joy. People that really love it, they really get into it. It's really something that brings joy. But I also think just understanding it, again, even if you're not going to that field, just having an understanding of it helps with just the age we're in terms of technology, and how to kind of use it, how to be safe, cybersecurity, all of that is wrapped up in computer science, and it's just overall beneficial. I saw, especially again when we shut down, like all these new apps popped up, all of this new software popped up. People are ordering more through DoorDash and all that stuff. So just understanding like how all of that actually works, and knowing that you can actually develop something like this and have it become a thing that people use to help them in their lives. It's not just sitting behind a computer typing away code, but it's actually impacting life. Like we can see how all of these apps make communication better, make ordering better, make a multitude of things better. And so just having that connection between, okay, I know how to build something like this, or I know how it works, and this is how it can help people. I think that makes a lot of sense for students as well, once they start to understand more about it.
Yeah, you mentioned, or I heard you say sharpening your mind. Like that is just so key. Certainly that has always been a thing. And even now, more so just in the 21st century and technology, whether it's creating lifelong learners and really helping to foster the use of students using their mind to kind of think out of the box.
Yeah.
I'm huge on not really teaching students what to think, but teaching them how to think. So when I hear you talk about sharpening your mind and problem solving, like for me, those are the skills. And we talked about it at the beginning. Testing has its importance, and certainly that is a part of it. But things that sharpen a student's mind, I just think those are so valuable. And for me, that's really something that's going to help a student have success and help a student thrive. So yes, the sharpening of the mind, also the problem solving. And so this might be a separate thing, but it still could be intertwined. Just the creativity part, I don't know if you can measure creativity. I don't know if you can test for creativity, but I still think it's something that is extremely valuable. What type of emphasis, or should I say importance, do you put on that, just the creativity piece and fostering that?
Absolutely. I think it's just as critical as the problem solving and as the inquiry. So you can have all the knowledge in the world, right? So you can know every fact and figure. If you don't know how to be creative and to put that knowledge to use in order to solve problems, all that knowledge is useless. What are you going to do with all that knowledge? You have to be able to put it to use, to solve problems, to create new things, to innovate. If you can't do that, all the knowledge is useless. And so again, to me, sharpening of the mind and being able to be creative and to put things to use, and to be able to solve problems creatively is key, not just for, for now, but for the future. And is just what it has to be. Like we have to be able to be creative in everything we're doing, right? Sorry, I kind of lost my train of thought, but yes, creativity.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I agree.
And I agree that you can't, it's harder to measure, but it depends what we're like, what is the metric and what are we trying to measure? Are we only trying to measure things that we can recall and remember? Because that's a lower level of thinking. But if we're trying to measure kind of the applied knowledge and students being creative, that's another level. That takes another level of thinking and using your mind and your brain. And again, as you know, I'm huge on sharpening the mind and being able to use that to create solutions, to create new pathways, to create new ways forward, and just to be able to solve problems that don't even exist now. Like if you have that mindset going forward, you can do anything.
That's huge. That's huge. To solve problems that don't even exist now.
Mm-hmm.
I see a lot of talk of, as educators trying to prepare students for the future, although we don't exactly know what the future will look like. So, that can certainly be a difficult task. But if you can just stimulate a child's creativity, as we mentioned, and help them to problem solve, then whatever that situation would be, they should have a good chance of succeeding and thriving and doing different things. So I think that's super important. I think you really, emphasize and articulated that very well. So I do want to switch over a little bit to, you have so much going on, you stay busy. I don't know how you do it all, when it comes to Melanin in STEM and when it comes to Teach for the Culture, LLC, in addition to, your duties at the school, where you work. How in the world, in addition to, having a family, being a mom, how do you fit it all in?
Yeah, so honestly, like it drives me. Because I'm passionate about every single part of it and every single piece, it drives me. I don't get like drained or depleted from it because I love it. I love all of it. Melanin STEM I started back in 2017 as a way to just broaden young people's awareness of all of the opportunities that exist within STEM. So science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. There are huge opportunities. There's just such a wide range of things that students can do with that. But if they're not aware of those opportunities that exist, then it's hard to pursue what you're not aware of. And so it was both that as well as showing that people of color, women of color are in these fields, even though we're vastly underrepresented, but showing that we are in these spaces, we are doing these things, and then developing that network. So if a student wants to go into, for example, to be a civil engineer, all right, here are 30 people that are civil engineers, and this is what they do, and this is how they've done it, and this was their pathway. And so Melanin STEM served to kind of show people's pathways to certain fields within STEM. It also highlighted people that are actually doing the work that look like people that look like us, that look like me, that look like other people of color, and also just showing the broad range of things that exist within the field. So that was one that I started in 2017. 2018, I started Teach for the Culture. Started off at first as just a blog, just a way to share and connect with other educators. And then it grew just organically over the years into more than just a blog, but I actually turn it into my business, and I do apparel and also consulting and other work through that.
Okay. I see a lot. Certainly, when I look on social media in terms of the apparel, I mean, that looks like it has really taken off. Tell me a little bit more about that, apparel, shirts. Are there some bags? I'm just interested and always love to see, when educators, I won't say step outside of their comfort zone, but they move in other lanes, or they're moving in other areas. That always excites me and intrigues me. So tell me a little bit more about that, and the process of shirt design and coming up with different slogans and colors. If you could just share a little bit more about that process.
Sure. And I'll say, so for me, like, before I became, like, when I was in high school, I started off in retail. So I've been working since I was like 12 years old. So when I was in high school, like, I worked in retail throughout college. Some of the summers I worked in retail, as well as working at the YMCA in North Philly and other things with kids. But so it's always been something that I don't necessarily like consider it a different lane. I just consider it like, just something I also just love to do. It also brings me joy, right? So I started off with just one design, and that was just the signature design, the name of the brand, which is Teach for the Culture. And my vision was to kind of build community through even just that. So that Teach for the Culture, like reaching out to other people who were people of color that are vastly underrepresented even within education. I know in Connecticut, it's 90% white as teachers. So just a way to like connect, show your pride for who you are, show your pride that you are an educator, inspire other people to teach, whether it be formally through, the teaching profession or more informally, but everyone has a gift to share. Everyone has knowledge to share. Everyone can inspire someone else. And so that's kind of the feeling behind Teach for the Culture. Off of that one design, I started to come up with just other designs, but they were all so short phrases that I believe in. So they're either short quotes that would make into a graphic, post on social media, and that would make it into a shirt. And so that's how I started developing additional designs. It was all from like quotes or phrases that I came up with. I posted as a graphic, and I'm like, you know what? I want that to also be a shirt. Like, I want to wear that. And so every single design is something that I also would wear. Every single design is something that I could give like a PD on every single quote, which is, professional development, because they're all things that I'm passionate about. The apparel, to me, it wasn't just for the aesthetic look. They're all very simple designs, but it's about the message. So it's all meant to spark a conversation, to open a conversation, to make a statement, to be worn as an affirmation. But every single one has a message that to me is a very important message regarding just social justice, equity, and education.
And for people that are interested, is it Shop TFTC? Is that it?
Yeah. So there's two different sites. So there's one, there's shoptftc.com, and those are for the signature brand, signature design, I should say. For all the other designs, the link is in my bio at Teach for the Culture or at TFTC_apparel. And those are both on Instagram. And the links are in the bios for those. Those get sent out through a third party shipper. The other ones get sent out from my home.
Okay. So are there, I just have to ask, are there some nights when you're up late, fulfilling orders and packaging and taking things to the post office, like that still takes place from time to time?
Oh yeah. There's sometimes my living room or my little office area just becomes like a shop. And so I'm just packaging. I package every single one individually with care. I always put, something special in there, whether it be a card or some other kind of small token. I like to personalize it, because I do appreciate when people, spend their time, spend their energy, or spend, or purchase from me. And so I like to show gratitude by just not shipping out the shirt by itself, but also just adding something special, an individual personalized touch. And so, yes, there are some long evenings, sometimes very early mornings, weekends, but I do it like it's all out of love. Like it doesn't drain me at all. Like it energizes me. I actually love doing that. And I love that people are wearing the message and willing to spread the messages that I put on these tees.
Indeed, indeed. I do want to acknowledge one comment that just came in, and it said we can use what the students know on social media to our advantage in the classroom, especially when teaching them how to use their student voice, professional versus personal. So
Yes,
that comment came in from Melissa Rickley. As we've discussed, I believe, that hits the nail on the head for sure. Instead of really, it's just that integration is just, for me, I guess, meeting students where they are. Like, they know how to do this sort of thing, but now weaving it or intertwining it into an educational context, I feel like, just help students with that engagement. And I think it really kind of helps them translate or apply what they're learning too, because it's now, okay, I'm taking something that I'm learning and maybe I'm doing something with video or social media. Okay, it might hit home a little bit more, so to speak.
right. Absolutely. Absolutely.
As we get ready to wrap up, what do you have any final thoughts? Are there some other things that you wanted to add in terms of the bigger discussion about joy in learning, or maybe some of the other things, what other things that you might want to add around creativity or problem solving or whatever it may be, that you feel like is just super important regarding education?
I think, just quickly, I think as whatever we're doing, whatever we choose to do, we have to do it with love and with passion. Every project that I've ever started or anything I'm engaged in, I'm in it because of love and passion. And that's what kind of fuels me. It fuels my work. And I think when you bring that kind of energy to what you're doing, I think you can impact people differently, right? And it's from an authentic place. It's not from a place of, just trying to make money or trying to be famous or whatever. It's from like a true, like authentic, this is something that I love. I love learning. I love teaching. And I want people to be excited about learning as well in whatever they're learning or whatever they're doing. And I want them to be excited about pursuing the path that's for them or that they're interested in. And knowing that, you don't have to have all the answers right now. I think being able to do that, you mentioned earlier about, standardized tests, being able to have open-ended questions, open-ended answers, opportunity to respond to something that doesn't have one definitive answer, but where you can have, a variety of answers, because that's in the real world, that's problem solving. There's not just one way. And so I think all of that is important to do. And I just want to, again, Clement, thank you for just having me on this evening. I really appreciated the opportunity to talk with you. I'm excited to see what you're doing in terms of, incorporating more video into the classroom. I think that's very necessary, very needed. So I'm excited for your work. So I want to send you a big up and a shout out for that.
Thank you. Thank you.
And just thank you again for having me on.
And what's the best way for people to connect with you?
On Instagram, I am at Teach for the Culture. That's one word. On Facebook, it's Teach for the Culture LLC under pages. And so either one of those, you can always DM me. I try to respond to all DMs, or just comment, or, just find me anyway. That way, my email is teachfortheculture, again, one word, @gmail.com.
Absolutely. I appreciate you being on, Shauna. And for anyone that may watch this at a later time, be sure to reach out with her and connect with her. Again, I want to thank Shauna for having this engaging discussion and sharing her expertise. I really appreciate anyone who was watching this or watches this at a later time. Certainly, you can feel free to connect with me as well. You can go to the website, www.videojournalismpro.com. That's www.videojournalismpro.com. There you'll have a free resource. And certainly you can connect with me on Facebook, C Townsend TV, or Instagram, C Townsend TV. I would love to speak with school districts, educators about this media creation process, how that can really allow students to have different choices and different opportunities to show what they know using video. Also having them be more creators instead of consumers, and getting them these transferable skills in terms of video and media creation. That does it for this discussion. I appreciate you watching.